They told me to be down there at 6:15 and I got there at 6.
Oh, good.
Because he called me to confirm I'd be there. And they took me back to the green room and saw him again at 6:45.
Awesome. Good.
It's crazy.
I don't know what that was happening. All right, we now have a quorum. We can start. All right, we'd like to welcome everyone and call to order the study meeting of West Valley City Council. It is July 16th, 2024. We're beginning our meeting at 4:32 p.m. in the multipurpose room of West Valley City Hall. We would excuse tonight Councilman Whetstone, Councilman Hune, and Councilman Norfelt. We have Councilman Fitzsimmonu online. And at the table, we have Councilman Harmon, Councilman Christensen, myself, and we're also joined by our city manager, Mr. Peely, and our city recorder, Ms. Kamick. So we have our minutes of July 9th, 2024. Turn those to the council for discussion or a motion.
Motion to approve the minutes of July 9th.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. And those stand approved. We'll go to our awards and ceremonies. Next week, we have a proclamation declaring August regular meeting review. Yeah, I'm gonna start picking these things off. Thank you. See, that's why Dawn's here. So our regular meeting tonight, any changes? Any questions from the council about tonight's meeting?
Just really the one issue, right?
Tied together.
Tied together.
Yeah. Okay.
One extended issue.
Okay. So no questions there. Now we'll move on to our awards and proclamations. So proclamation declaring August as Neighborhood Nights Month and August 6th, our Neighborhood Night Out 2024. Is there anyone that would like to read that proclamation? It's between you and Don, Jake, because Scott and I won't be here next week.
Read it. Let me check my calendar, make sure I'll
Sure,
be
you're gonna be in
there.
town.
You can read it from home if you want.
Yeah, but I'll be in town. Yeah.
All right, we'll note that Jake will do that. Thank you. All right, we'll go to our public hearing application ZT6 2024. And we'll turn the time over to Mr. Pastrick. This is a West Valley City request for a zone change. A change to the text, I should say.
Thank you, Mayor. Steve Pastrick, Community Development Director. So this is a change to the sign code, and two of the three changes are ones that the council requested. And so the first is, you'll recall that right now the code has an exception or exemption, I should say, for non-commercial banner signs. So the first change is removing that exemption, which means then those types of banners would be subject to the same regulations as any other banners. So that's the first change. The other is to basically add a change that would make signs that are not protected by the U.S. or Utah constitutions prohibited. And again, the content that would be on such a sign would have to be very, very bad in order to be excluded. But that is another change that the council requested. And then finally, we did some touch up while we're in there to our temporary sign regulations. And the biggest change there was that we have our section that deals with window signage. So right now, the code says you can have 50% of your windows can have signage in them. Well, it was written through the lens of like a typical one-story retail building. Well, if you have a multi-story building, 50% of all the windows, that's a lot. And so we clarified that the window signage would be limited to the first floor. So the signs can be on the first floor, and the area limitation is just on the first floor. So that's a fairly significant change. But again, the concern was we have multi-story buildings. Our feeling was we don't want to have window signs on every floor and 50% of all the windows being able to have a sign.
So I just drove past the USANA building on Bangalore. And their top floor has, their top floor is more than 50% signage, just that top floor. It's one big sign. How does that fit within what we're adjusting here?
Yeah, so if it's a multi-story building, the way it's written right now is that the proposal is that those signs would have to be on the ground floor. And that if you look at the windows on the ground floor, it can be 50% of that area. So yeah, that in that scenario, that wouldn't comply based on what's proposed.
Their windows go to the ground, right? There's not brick at the very bottom? I can't remember. I know they use that whole west side as one big
sign.
sign.
And it's very well done, but it's just not.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if they would argue that their landscape that we require them to put in blocks the main floor, the first floor.
They would probably be grandfathered in, maybe because they had it before. Change
is that?
anything?
The challenging thing, that's something maybe I'll need to look into, is that if anything that requires a permit, then at that point you could be grandfathered. But in a scenario where a sign doesn't require a permit and it's temporary, probably would not be grandfathered.
So sticker, it's like, that's basically what it is, a sticker on the window. That's not an actual sign, it would be.
But it's a sign, isn't it?
Yeah, if it's in the window, whether it's inside or outside, if you can see it, then yeah, we consider it a window sign. And I can clarify the non-conforming status, but usually if it's a temporary type thing that doesn't actually get a permit, like these would not, then it wouldn't be considered a non-conforming situation, but I'll confirm that.
Okay. Because I know the Smiths by 47th and 4,000, their windows out front used to just have all signage. It wasn't, there was no 50%. Every single window had
And that would be,
vegetables and whatever else on it.
that'd be a violation under the ordinance right now.
Windows.
I think they're windows. So what if they just put plywood up and put it on that, not on an actual window?
So you can have banners. We do allow banners to be on the exterior of the, and you can have, so it basically would have to fit into one of our prescribed sign types. So we do allow wall signs that are like permanent signs that are affixed to the building. The banners are meant to be more temporary, and those are also limited in size and,
Oh, yeah.
Come closer, Steve.
Come to the light.
That's attached on the outside.
Yeah. I think so.
Okay. I think those two examples are gonna be our toughest ones. Okay. So no fourth story signs, just everything on the main level.
correct.
Yeah.
Again, the thought being, when that was written, we believe it was geared more towards retail type situations, and, you know, vast majority of retail buildings are single level.
Just talking more about multi-story buildings that have signage. Our big neighbor across the street, there's quite a bit of signage on our Fairborn, is that what we call that? The big commercial building next door.
Oh, yeah, I don't know what you call that office complex.
Is that gonna be in compliance now, or?
So in that situation, again, I'll clarify that so you have banners, right? And so the banners aren't limited to being on like a first floor. Those can be higher up on the building. And so I believe we were considering that more to be the non-commercial banner, which again, right now is exempt.
No, I'm actually not talking about the banner they have there, but I think they have the business name at the top.
Oh, yeah. So so in that case, the permanent sign, those are
Okay.
a different type of signs. We do allow wall signs to be on a building. And there's a different set of regulations for size and placement.
So that's gonna be fine. It's just
Yeah.
the sticker maybe on USANA is have issues.
Yeah, and I'll look into that one specifically to see if that's one they did as a sign or if that's more just something temporary there.
Okay, so I don't see any movement from Councilman Fitzimanu. Don, did you have anything else?
No.
Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you.
All right, we'll now go to ordinance 24-31. Now I'll turn the time over to Ms. Kamic for our consent agenda consideration.
Yes, so this is just the ordinance change that we discussed last week, which would essentially allow the council to move any non-controversial, non-public hearing items to the consent agenda. So the way that this would work is I would just put together the study meeting as normal. And then at the end of the study meeting, the mayor would just ask if there is any objection from the council to adding everything on there that's not a public hearing to the consent agenda the following week. If there's no issues with that, I'll just do that. But also keeping in mind that the council can still remove any item that they don't want considered on the consent agenda during the regular meeting.
So does that have to be a majority vote to take it off the consent agenda after it's
Nope.
been moved there here?
Nope,
They can just,
Yep.
if they make the motion, it's just done.
it's just done. Yep,
Okay.
so there's no,
No second, no vote,
Nope.
just comes off.
yep, so anyone can just say, I'd like to remove this item and it's just automatically done. So,
Okay. Any questions on that one?
When would you would put them on the consent agenda when we have kind of a understanding here in study meeting that we want those there? I just wonder, do we need to have it specify that it's routine or non-controversial? The consent agenda may include items
Mhm.
that don't require a public hearing.
Okay, yeah, we can make that change in the actual code itself, just
Yeah.
saying, okay.
Yeah, make sure it says that.
It still might be controversial, but we're all in agreement that it can be on the consent agenda.
So just kind of strike that language and put in, okay. Yeah. Yep, can do that. Okay, I'll make that adjustment.
And then just to clarify, sorry, so to remove an item out of the consent agenda that is just a single request, doesn't require a majority vote, but to add any item on there, we still need to get a motion and second, is that right?
So it would just be an automatic, if so the mayor during study meeting, at the end of the meeting will say, is there any concern with adding all items to the consent agenda next week? And if the council doesn't have any objection, I'll just do that. So it'll just automatically be on the consent agenda for the regular meeting. And then if one person just says, I'm okay doing that, except maybe for resolution 24-100, then I can add everything to the consent aside from that. And then again, like throughout the week, if the council's looking at the agenda and they're like, I may have some additional questions on this one, you can still make that motion in the regular meeting to remove that, and it's non-debatable. There's no roll call. We would just take that off and do a separate motion that way.
So would we attack that one first and then go to the consent agenda, or finish up with the consent agenda and then take that issue?
That would be however you guys are most comfortable. I would
Okay.
say probably the person would make the motion and say, I approve the consent agenda without resolution 24, blah, blah.
Okay,
So then you would vote on everything else and then go to that one that everyone's concerned or that
Okay.
person's.
and then have the
And then
debate.
have that conversation and motion then, but that
Okay.
can be however you guys feel comfortable.
Might come up next week.
Yeah, that point of procedure is clear to me, and I'm okay with that, thank you.
Great. Okay, any other questions on that one? All right, so now we'll go to our resolutions and we're gonna, resolution 24-120, and we'll turn the time over to Mr. Cushing. About purchase of laptops.
Thank you, Ken Cushing, Information Technology. But for the last, many years, we've been replacing the oldest quarter of police machines each year. And for the last 2 or 3 years, it's been part of the IT budget to do so. This resolution is for a portion of that are being replaced this year. These are all for patrol cars. We tried out a few ruggedized laptops last year, and that's what we recommended for all patrol cars in the foreseeable future. But basically the difference is this is what's been going in there. But in that environment in patrol cars, a lot of these screens have been having to be replaced. And these more ruggedized versions, we've had not one yet that's needed a screen or anything else replaced. So that's what we're recommending going forward. Is there any questions?
Being online.
I think as I read your issue paper, the cost is very similar between the two.
Yes, the cost of having an accidental warranty has gone up quite a bit. And so the difference in cost is basically that what the accidental cost would be. So it makes sense to move forward, and that saves a lot of time, everybody's time of having a downtime of the machine.
And are we doing just a quarter again, or are we doing more than that?
We're just doing a quarter, yeah. Part of the reason we were able to do that is Sean Trujillo, that runs the help desk, he's able to negotiate a very good price on these. So.
Okay, seeing no other questions, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll now go to resolution 24-121. And we'll turn the time over to Mr. Pastrick for impact fees.
All right, thank you again. So the first of these two is a contract with Parametrics, and that would be to update the city's major street plan and the city's impact fee facilities plan for roads. So to provide a little bit more background, so for all of our impact fees, we have roads, police, fire, parks, and stormwater. For those 5, in order to do an update, you have to first do an impact fee facilities plan. Sorry, these are a mouthful. And then once you have the plan, you can do what's called an impact fee analysis, which is where you set the fees. In the case of the first contract with Parametrics, they're doing the impact fee facilities plans for roads. So they're an actual transportation firm that specializes in this. And really, when it comes to the road impact fees, they are by far the most complicated because you have to actually do like transportation modeling for the whole city, whereas the other impact fees don't require that level of analysis. So you have this first contract that's really focusing on the road plan to inform the impact fees. And then the next item on the agenda is the contract with Central Lewis Young to do all the other impact fee plan or impact fee facilities plans, as well as the impact fee analysis for all the other fees.
So one question for me, on any of those, are we gonna put together the street light plan, or is it needed to be reviewed or the fee adjusted?
So that's actually a separate fee.
Okay,
And if memory serves, I don't believe we can charge impact fees. I'm looking to
Okay.
Dan.
Well, and we don't charge impact fees for lighting.
okay. Just making sure. It is just a separate fee,
Right.
but our storm drain fee is a fee.
We do have, so
We have a citizen fee and then an impact for new development.
right, so in the case of, and Dan can correct me if I get this wrong, in most of the city, we don't have new infrastructure that would pay or development where, excuse me, back up. And we only have a few areas in the city where there's still an impact fee required, and that's where there are new facilities that need to go in, or there are reimbursement agreements that need to be paid. And that's for new infrastructure, but the stormwater utility goes for ongoing maintenance and support of the system. So I'm getting the head nod.
Okay. Just making sure the difference. Okay. Any questions from anyone else? Okay, thank you. Knock two of them out. All right. Not sure if we're gonna have to revisit all these again anyway. Our communications for tattoo establishments. So you received the information in a text, an email. Did anybody have any further questions or suggestions of how to move forward? You want to give any kind of little presentation before they on tattoo establishments?
Just if there are questions on the email that went out, I don't have any additional information beyond what was in the email, just if there are questions.
So Jake, did you have any questions?
I think it was just a historical question around and I think it was answered in an email response, but just if there were any specific specific, I guess, incidents or compelling reasons for why the zoning was made more restrictive than it had been previously, or if that was just a personal preference of the council at the time, or was it to avoid a particular application that was being proposed, or anything that was it a big compelling reason for that in the past?
Yeah, great question. And in both instances, so I mentioned in the email, there were two changes, one in 97, one in 17. In both cases, the change was made together with other changes. And as I went and looked at the applications and the meeting minutes, there really wasn't discussion around like reasons for that specific change, unfortunately.
Right. And yeah, I remember that was addressed. And I guess my thing with it now is unless there is a real compelling, public health or, safety reason or something else that, we're specifically looking at for the restriction on the area. I'm personally not super opposed to allowing that to expand if that is a business line that people are proposing, or if there's a demand for it in the community. And yeah, I'm not sure where my own cousin's tattoo parlor or what the zoning is there in Midvale, but I know he's a super good neighbor, and the other businesses in that neighborhood adjoining it don't necessarily have any issues with clientele or wild parties happening in the middle of the night or something like that. But that's why I had just asked if we're aware of any previous incidents or reasons why that might have been there. And I understand that, yeah, you just don't have that in the historical purview of the documents there. But yeah, in general, I'm not super opposed to relaxing that if that's something that business owners are asking for. But I also know that Councilman Whetstone has been in pretty close contact with at least one individual or community member that had this concern, and so I'd like to hear his perspective and angle on this, perhaps at another meeting or discussion.
So for myself, I don't see a reason it can't be in a C2. I think the one business that kind of brought this to the forefront, when I go get my haircut, I walk past his door or their door every single time. It looks just the same as the girl who does the nails, that does the hair, does the eyelashes. So for me, especially being in those salon suites, it just doesn't seem to be any different than the other professional services that are being done there, so. Anybody else have any opinions?
C2 just basically opens up everywhere.
Yeah. Well, and is there a caveat that we have them in just the salon suites, or how would you recommend us moving forward if we want to allow them in some places, but maybe not all of the places?
So yeah, right now, if we just open it in C2, that would open up in pretty much any, 35th, 56, Redwood, all of those areas. My thought is, I don't know that I would see a benefit necessarily of making a distinction of like a freestanding versus a tenant. I don't know that in my view matters, but that's just my opinion.
Okay. So truly, I think we need more of the council here to have a better discussion. So if you don't mind maybe putting this on in
In a couple of weeks.
Yeah. when more people will be here, when holiday season's over.
Okay.
So we'll hold off taking this to planning commission until we have further discussion.
Yeah, I think having the other three here would be helpful.
I agree with that.
Okay. I don't think we're in a big rush, are we?
No, this was actually brought up by council, so it wasn't something brought up by staff. So whatever the council's pleasure on this one.
Okay, thank you. And then I don't know who's gonna deal with the e-bikes. Is that gonna be you as well?
Nope, that's not me.
Okay.
Come on, Steve.
Is that gonna be illegal? So our other concern was the e-bikes and trails. I think that one, we'll get an introduction and a little bit of chit chat, but I think the main discussion will have to be when everybody else is here.
Yeah, and Eric Bunderson, Legal Department, thank you. My understanding is there were some questions about e-bikes on the trails. And the Legal Department did a little bit of research and returned a memo. I do want to make one correction on that memo. Type 3 e-bikes don't have a throttle. So type 1 or class 1, I think they're called here. Class 1, got the code right here. Class 1 goes up to 20 miles an hour, pedal only. Class 2 goes up to 20 miles an hour, but you can use the throttle. And then class 3 goes up to 28 miles an hour, but doesn't have a throttle. So the way that Utah law has defined all of these is they are bikes. Now, anything beyond that is like a motorcycle or something else. We don't call it a bike, but those 3 classes of bikes are bicycles, and we are to regulate those basically like bicycles. Now, a city can be more restrictive. For example, we could say we don't want any class 3 bicycles on this trail because they go too fast. We don't want any class 2 because the throttle can make them go out of control, or they're heavier and stuff like that. So we can restrict those. We can also restrict electric scooters under a completely different law. So they are we can regulate them more than the state regulates them.
So is the trail that runs along Mountain View a city maintained and controlled, or is that a UDOT controlled? Do they make the rules for that?
Could I throw to some of my friends back there on that one?
Mr. Johnson?
Sure. When UDOT built Mountain View Corridor, the city executed cooperative agreements wherein the city agreed to maintain and operate the trail.
So we could put restrictions if needed.
Yeah.
And Jordan River?
That's I believe a county facility.
Okay, because I know Jordan River Commission is looking into banning or regulating or doing something on that trail. Okay.
A lot of places will, like, for example, I think Draper will regulate the class 2 and 3s and just allow the class 1s because they don't go as fast, and you can't throttle them. So those are all reasonable regulations. What the state law requires us to do is just allow for some sort of consideration for people with disabilities who need to use those kind of bikes. And so we could certainly craft something like that if we need to. And same with the scooters. We can regulate them altogether different, and we can ban them from the areas of the trails that we control.
And the electric skateboards?
I imagine that's the same. We didn't look into electric skateboards. Sorry, there's a new electric vehicle every time you turn around.
Yeah, I know my son-in-law uses it along the Provo River Trail,
Uh-huh.
and he hasn't had problems,
Yeah.
but they do go zipping past
Yeah,
normal walkers.
yeah, yeah.
You have to be mindful who's around you.
Yeah, yeah, my understanding is that, this isn't a West Valley or a Utah problem. It's a nationwide problem from New York to California.
Okay.
I haven't had any issues with them on the trails more than on the roads when we're, trying not to hit them.
Mhm. Right, right. And again, on the roads, we treat them just like regular bicycles, which are often, and for the most part, treated like cars. In fact, as I was refreshing my memory on this, I realized you can even get a DUI on any of these e-bikes. So
Oh, interesting.
just like a regular bikes or a horse, famous case. Anyway.
Okay.
So then just to clarify then, gas powered like mopeds or Vespas or what they call those are considered more or less motorcycles, and those vehicles are not permitted, correct, in the current regulations? Okay.
Yes, sir. And that,
Um,
sorry, go ahead.
no, I'm just looking back at the email that I received from that particular resident, and those were the vehicles he was mentioning. He actually even says he's not talking about e-bikes or motorized bicycles. So if those are currently prohibited, um, can anyone help us understand what that enforcement or monitoring looks like or doesn't look like at this time?
Or if we need to put up signage.
Yeah, I don't think you need signage. I don't think those vehicles are allowed. And so, yeah, the enforcement, unfortunately, I can't speak to the enforcement part. We can look into that and I'm happy to come back to the council after consulting with some of the staff and talk about that more.
Honestly, I think this particular resident might be satisfied with, a response on a particular number or what department to call if they see another, scooter on the trail or another kid on a motorcycle or something like that. And as I read between the lines here, I think it's that's more of the gist here.
We'll make sure we close that loop.
Cool,
Sure.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we have our council calendar up next. Did anybody have any concerns with that? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move to potential future agenda items. Does anybody have anything?
Just as we were discussing the bikes and that, I don't know if we all got a copy of that from Angel. Petition from several members of the community asking us to do some more lifestyle policing, vagrancy, that type of thing. Would that be something we want to discuss or just pass the petition on to the chief?
Let's see, I think I sent that yesterday. It came from a generic group. I don't know that they're members of West Valley or not. They didn't clarify.
Many of the names I
Are familiar.
recognize
Awesome.
residents,
Yeah, it just says
many
that,
of them up in the Blue Haven neighborhoods.
just said there's a national movement underway to cut back on quality of life policing methods, such as making arrests for vandalism, littering, loitering, vagrancy, public intoxication, and other quality of life violations.
And do we, as a city, codify or categorize a specific set of laws that we deem to be quote unquote quality of life laws, or are they just kind of scattered throughout?
I think in reading what they listed as quality of life, they're scattered throughout the code. Just whether or not, you know. Well, we know Joe, he's always on that street corner and we'll check on him and make sure he's still well, but we won't do anything more. We need to emphasize things a little bit more, I think is what they were asking.
Yeah, I personally haven't heard, again, maybe a better discussion with the Fuller council. But I haven't had any recent calls to decriminalize any of these things that are, at least the ones listed in his email, but
I mean, either, but I was just thinking, you know, you pass the email on to the chief and let her look at it and say, we can handle that in our regular training.
sure. Yeah, and I would be more concerned about, you know, us doing things that are maybe not real clear in terms of being enforceable. If you're just looking at quality of life in general, and I don't know that that's been an issue with us recently here either, but I mean, sure, if the others want to talk about it, I'm okay with that, but I haven't necessarily heard anything urgent or recent around efforts to decriminalize this.
Yeah, I haven't either. In fact, I was driving home from my parents' house last night on 40th West. And we had one of our finest officers out in the middle of the road helping a guy who was probably drunk.
Struggling to walk.
Didn't have shoes on and was just walking down the middle of the road. And so, I mean, I think I've always been impressed by our officers and all they do to try to police and
Trying to
monitor
help.
what's going on and
Yeah.
enforce civility.
So should we put this back on in a couple of weeks when more people are here?
You can do that.
Okay.
And in the meantime, Mary, I guess we can talk.
And see if there's a solution.
Yeah, see what,
She may
take
have
a deeper dive
solution
into
to
this.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to wrap my mind around what they're asking.
for.
Yeah, I don't really know. But we'll take a look at it and see what they,
There may be, and it kind of sounds, I'm trying to read through their text. Maybe there's movements in other areas of the country to decriminalize some of these things. I don't know if we really have that in West Valley.
I don't think
we
so.
don't.
We usually get that from the legislature. Well,
Yeah.
they're doing it in Maryland and it works fine, so let's do it here.
Yeah.
So I think they're just trying to voice their concerns that we don't do something like that other communities are
doing.
maybe trying to do.
I recognized one signature on there and I know back during the campaign time when we had a problem over in the Blue Haven neighborhood and got the COP involved and dealt with it. She mentioned that she actually found somebody on their back porch when they came home and just resting there till they could find a ride home. So.
Okay. Well, we'll approve this one and put it on for a later date. Council reports.
Went to the block party for the Performing Arts Center. Gave those that were in the actual performance part of it a welcome and used a few of my theatrical wording that I knew about. Oh, I was just the mayor's understudy and she didn't leave me a script, so I had to wing it on my own and they liked that. There was a full crowd there. They had the theater filled. And I mentioned to them that's why we kind of turned it over to them so they could fill the theater because I've been attending, I think I missed 5 performances since the theater opened. And it was back when it was Hale even. And I said, sadly, we haven't seen a crowd this big in those performances that I've been attending. So I kind of challenged them to keep it going and told them we were happy to have them. So. And they were kind of happy to see me too, so.
Thank you for doing that.
My pleasure. They did have some outdoor activities beforehand, and I saw that Neighborhood Services was down there helping with those and that, so. I think they realized that they're not the enemy and we're not the enemy. We're gonna cooperate together and get it working. So.
Awesome.
Then I was at the Chill with the Chief last night. We had about 10 or 12, 10 or 15 citizens come in, talk to the chief, talk to the officers that were there, enjoy the snow cones. Very quietly.
So on Sunday, I went to mass at St. Peter and Paul. They had their year-end celebration and their New Year celebration. And they're looking at expanding their church. So their congregation has grown to over 600. They have pews for 300. And it was outdoors. It was about 3 hours.
Yeah.
But it was really a good service. So that's what their future is, fundraising and looking at either tearing down the building they have and rebuilding or adding on to that. They're still looking at which way the dais will let them do that, so that'll be good to have that growth in the community. So. Nothing from Jake? Okay. So we do not have need for a closed session, so we just have one more action item.
Adjourn.
And all in favor, say aye.
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 We stand adjourned. See you at 6:30 in the other room.